So let's talk about the two most important things, the two most important concepts that you need to grasp if you really want to make the jump and become truly successful in whatever it is that you're doing. So if you do them well at the right time, you win. If you don't do them, or you do them at the wrong time, you lose. And you can end up wasting years or even decades of your life. So pay very close attention and make sure that you're taking notes when you're watching this video, because this is going to require you to think and reflect on your own life. So let's get into it. So here are the two words. One is focus and the other one is pivot. Focus and pivot. So every few years, you will find yourself in front of two different options. You'll find yourself at crossroads. You'll find yourself in a situation where you need to make a radical decision. Do you need to go left or do you need to go right? Do you need to pivot or do you need to focus? So let's get into some real life examples. So I was trained as a professional tennis player. My goal was to become a tennis pro. For the better part of a decade, I trained every single day to become a tennis pro. I was lucky to be trained by some of the best coaches in the history of tennis. I competed against some of the best tennis players in history because I was number one in the country, number one in Switzerland. And so when you're number one in the country, the federation sends you all over the world to compete against other number ones and number twos from other countries. I competed against and played against Rafael Nadal from Spain, Novak Djokovic from Serbia, and dozens of other players who went on to be very successful in the pros. And so between the ages of 12 to 21, I practiced and trained pretty much every single day. And the only time when I did not practice was when I was injured. So at age 17, which is a key moment when you go from the juniors to the pros, I got injured. I tore my quadriceps, and so that set me back for about 9 months being away from regular practice every single day, and I just basically had to heal. And I was watching my competitors, all the other players train every single day. So that was the first injury. After the injury, I healed and I went back to play on the Future and the Challenger Tour, which is the level that's under the ATP Tour. And I kept training every single day with amazing coaches, amazing conditioning coaches. And a few years later, I was playing really well, but at age 21, I got pneumonia twice in one summer. All the other players and most of the players that I was competing directly against a few years earlier had already turned pros. Some of them had won Grand Slams. And so I was confronted with this thought: do I pivot or do I focus? And I don't really know if it was something that I picked up naturally from coaches. I don't know where I picked up the pivot or focus concept, but I literally was confronted with that. Do I keep going? Do I keep doing this tennis thing? Even though all the players around me who I wanted to compete against with directly in the pros, because I had competed against them in the juniors, I wanted to be like them and to beat them. But the bottom line is my time had passed in tennis. And so they had made the jump to the pros, and at age 21, that's when I decided to pivot. Why? Because although I could have had a semi-successful tennis career in the pros, I had gotten injured twice at a time when you just cannot get injured. And so I was confronted very early with the necessity of pivoting quickly and finding something else. So overnight, I literally pivoted to going into building online businesses, and that's what I did. I had a taste of success years earlier because I started selling on eBay in the early 2000s, and so that kind of opened the door to the possibility of making money online. Overnight, when I retired from tennis at age 21 in 2007, I said, okay, let's forget about tennis. Let's go big into online entrepreneurship. At the time, by the way, starting an online business was very risky. This was over 15 years ago. The internet was still a risk. And so people around me thought I was crazy, but I believed in myself. I believed that, the internet was the future. And luckily, I did very well. And that's why you're seeing this video right now. But the point is that at that time, I was forced to either focus or pivot. So coming back to the years where I was number one in the country, where I was traveling to the world championships, the European championships representing my country, yes, I was playing very well because I was fully focused. And the coaches did everything for us, right? The coaches did the thinking for us. The message was very clear. If you want to be good at tennis, you cannot play ice hockey. My big love was ice hockey. I actually prefer ice hockey than playing tennis, but I couldn't. I had to focus on only one thing. And so from a very young age, you're ingrained, you're taught the idea and the necessity of focusing on one main thing. And then when came the time, I made that pivot. And so the concept of focusing or pivoting, I actually experienced it and lived it before reading any kind of book about personal development or the idea or the necessity of focusing and pivoting at the right time in life. I just did it. So I can talk about it very openly because I experienced it. Now, when I pivoted from pro sports, so pro tennis, to pro business, I was lucky because I found success very early. I started selling online very quickly. I made well over 6 figures in my first year. So it showed me that it's possible. And so that pivot from tennis to business was successful. And when I found success in business, I was confronted with a new set of challenges or a new set of decisions, which was, do I stay on this path of business or do I go to college? Do I do something else? Do I get into a new field? And that's when I decided to focus. It went from focusing on tennis to then pivoting outside of tennis into business, and then finding success in business, and then focusing on business. And so that's what got me to building several businesses, acquiring businesses, running a company that does about $30 million a year today, and growing that steadily and doing well over $200 million in sales over the course of my business career. And so what you need to understand is the necessity of either focusing on one thing or pivoting and doing something completely different. You cannot do a bit of both. You need to either pivot or focus. And so whatever you're doing in life right now, take a few moments to think about where you are. Are you in a phase right now where you need to focus because something's working? Or are you in a phase right now where things are difficult and you're struggling and you might need to pivot and do something else? And so level 2 of this is doing a meta focus or a meta pivot. Because what's going to happen is you will, when you find something that you're focusing on, you will find that there's times within that discipline, within that sport, within that business. And so if the thing that you're doing is overall successful, right? Let's say you're running a successful business, within that, under that umbrella, you will be trying different things and then either cutting or doing more of. And I'll give you a very sad story because this is exactly what not to do. In 2016, 2017, I had a client, an agency client. At the time I was running a digital marketing agency. We were doing a lot of consulting and paid media buying. And one of the clients was running a pretty successful business, and we got her from about $5,000 to over 6 figures a month. Now, when she had her first 6-figure month, she celebrated, but she decided to take a few months off. She had been struggling before that. She'd been struggling for years trying to build her business. We got her from 5K to over 100,000 a month. And guess what? She told us a few weeks later, you know what? I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to enjoy. I'm going to travel. I'm going to do the things I've always wanted to do. Keep in mind, getting to 6 figures a month is nice. Having $100,000 will not change your life if you live in the West, which was her case. She was living in Europe, so it wasn't going to change her life dramatically. Now, what it did do, because she took about 3 months off, is instead of pushing when things were going well, instead of pushing and going all in, like I said, and trying to build that business and go from 100,000 to 200,000 and really build a solid base and a solid foundation to her business. And so when she came back from the 3 months off, and I warned her, I said, do not stop now. You're finding some success now. Now is the time to focus. She said, no, I want to live my life. I want to have fun. I want to travel. I said, great, you can do that. But the consequence is that other people came into the market, ads got more expensive, and the business model she was using to get to that first $100,000 a month just wasn't working anymore. And so the business crashed and she had to close down. She had to let all her employees go, and that was the end of it. And again, I had warned her, so there's nothing more I could have done. And that is a great example of what not to do. When something starts working, especially if you've gone through a phase of trying to make things work, you have to go deep, you have to go all in and make as much money as you can because things change very, very quickly. So again, focus or pivot. Now, think about your own life. Think about where you are right now. Do you have to pivot or do you have to focus and go all in? Think about that. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll talk to you soon.